In a world divided by war, where guns spoke louder than words, what if a single man could make the fighting stop? Not with weapons, but with a football. This is not a story of politicians or generals, but of Didier Drogba, a footballer who against all odds helped to bring peace to a nation in turmoil. The question is, how could one man, with the eyes of the world on him, put an end to a civil war in Ivory Coast? Today, we explore the incredible, untold story of how he stopped an ongoing war. Ivory Coast, a nation once known for its economic prosperity and stability in West Africa, faced a grim reality by 2002. Political unrest, social tensions and ethnic divides erupted into violence, splitting the country into two. The government held the south while rebels took control of the north. Families were torn apart, homes were destroyed, and the once peaceful nation was now drowned in chaos. While the war raged at home, far away in Europe, Didier Drogba was becoming a football superstar. He was the pride of Ivory Coast, scoring goals for Chelsea, winning trophies, and bringing joy to his people back home, who desperately needed hope. Football was one of the few things that still brought the divided nation together. Whether in the rebel-controlled north or the government-controlled south, Ivorians would gather to watch Drogba's matches, forgetting the conflict for a brief moment. It didn't matter which side of the war you were on, Drogba's success was their success. He became a symbol of hope, representing what Ivory Coast could achieve if it could put its differences aside. As Drogba soared to new heights in Europe, winning matches and trophies for Chelsea, the situation back home continued to deteriorate. But even with his success abroad, Drogba's heart remained in Ivory Coast. He knew that his country needed more than just football, it needed peace. And in 2005, he was about to get the chance to use his platform for something far greater than sport. As Ivory Coast's civil war raged on, leaving signs of devastation, football still brought the nation together. The national team had a chance to make history by qualifying for the World Cup for the very first time. For many, it wasn't just about sport. It was a brief moment of unity in a country torn in two. Everyone watched as their team played not just for glory, but for something far greater. The decisive game took place on October 8, 2005 against Sudan. Ivory Coast needed to win. They had been performing well under the leadership of Drogba throughout the World Cup qualifiers. But despite their impressive form, qualification wasn't entirely in their hands. While victory over Sudan was crucial, they also needed Cameroon to drop points in their match against Egypt. Cameroon, a football powerhouse in Africa, had qualified for every World Cup since 1982, except one. Ivory Coast was determined to break that streak. Against Sudan, Ivory Coast came out with determination. The Elephants dominated the match from the start, controlling possession and launching wave after wave of attacks on the Sudanese defence. Their efforts paid off early and the goals started to flow. Ivory Coast took an early lead in the 22nd minute and continued to press, showing their focus and desire. Early in the second half, they extended their lead and soon they found the back of the net again to make it 3-0 by the 73rd minute. Though Sudan managed to pull one goal back in the 89th minute, Ivory Coast never seemed under real threat. With the final whistle, Ivory Coast secured a crucial 3-1 victory. However, their hopes of World Cup qualification still hung in the balance, as they needed Cameroon to drop points. As news filtered in, Ivory Coast learned that Cameroon had been held to a tense 1-1 draw by Egypt. An equaliser from Egypt in the 80th minute had thrown Cameroon's qualification into doubt, but the drama was far from over. In the dying moments of the match, Cameroon was awarded a penalty. The entire nation of Ivory Coast fell into a stunned silence, knowing that if Cameroon scored, their World Cup dream would be over. The penalty represented everything, the hopes of one nation and the fears of another. The pressure was almost unbearable as the Cameroonian player stepped up to take the penalty. Ivory Coast watched with bated breath, praying for a miracle. The shot was taken and missed. In that single moment, everything changed. It was a miss that would go down in African football history, a miss that meant Cameroon was eliminated. The final whistle in that match confirmed what had once seemed impossible. Ivory Coast had secured their place in the World Cup for the very first time. The entire nation erupted in celebration. For the players, it was a moment of triumph. For Didier Drogba, it was a defining achievement in his career, not just as a footballer, but as a symbol of hope for his country. Ivory Coast qualification for the World Cup was more than a sporting success. It was a source of national pride, a reason to believe in a future beyond the conflict. But what happened next was even more unexpected. Drogba, standing in the locker room with his teammates, seized the moment. With cameras rolling, he dropped to his knees and made an emotional plea for peace.
Ivoiriens, Ivoiriennes, du nord et du sud, du centre à l'ouest. Vous avez vu, on vous a prouvé aujourd'hui que toute la Côte d'Ivoire peut cohabiter, peut jouer ensemble pour un même objectif, se qualifier pour le mondial.
It was an emotional moment. A footballer, not a politician, was making a heartfelt plea to the entire nation, begging for peace, for unity, for an end to the bloodshed. It wasn't just his words that struck a chord, but the way he delivered them, with raw emotion and sincerity. In that brief moment, Drogba had given the country something it hadn't felt in years: hope. But the question remained, would his words be enough to change the course of a nation torn apart by war? Yes, it did. Drogba's plea for peace was heard across the nation. What had started as a moment of celebration quickly turned into something much larger. Almost overnight, Drogba's words spread far beyond the locker room, echoing in the hearts and minds of the people. For a country torn apart by ethnic and political divides, his call for unity came from a place that no one expected. From a footballer, a hero that both sides could rally behind. Suddenly, his words were on everyone's lips. His message wasn't about ideology or power. It was about the people, about healing, about a future that everyone could share. And it worked. His call for unity resonated not just with the citizens, but also with those in power. Rebel leaders and government officials alike began to realise that this could be their chance. Drogba's words didn't end the war immediately, but they set the wheels of peace in motion. What had once seemed impossible, negotiations between the rebel forces and the government, was now happening. It wasn't just a ceasefire on paper, it was the start of something real. In 2007, a peace agreement was reached, ending years of violence. And through it all, Drogba remained a powerful symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, unity is possible. Didier Drogba's influence didn't stop with football or his call for peace. After the ceasefire, he continued to use his fame to make a real difference in the lives of the people of Ivory Coast. In 2007, he made a big decision. He donated his entire £3 million endorsement fee from Pepsi to build a hospital in his hometown. His goal was simple: to provide better healthcare for Ivory Coast, a country still recovering from the effects of war. That hospital became the first of many projects Drogba would lead to improve healthcare, education and living conditions for people in need. Through his charity, the Didier Drogba Foundation, he has helped build schools, medical centres and provided scholarships, giving hope to children and families who had little. Drogba understood that peace wasn't just about stopping the violence, it was about giving people opportunities and the basic things they need to live. Because of his growing influence, Drogba was appointed as a Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations Development Programme in 2007. This important role allowed him to expand his humanitarian work on a global level, working to reduce poverty, improve healthcare, and help with sustainable development in some of the world's poorest regions. In 2021, his global impact was further recognised when the World Health Organization named him a Goodwill Ambassador for Sport and Health. Drogba's story isn't just about the goals he scored or the trophies he won. It's about a man who used his fame, his power and his heart to help heal a divided country. His work for peace didn't end with one speech. It has continued long after the applause stopped. Didier Drogba's legacy will be remembered not only in football, but also in the countless lives he has touched, and the hope he has given to a nation once torn apart.